Hey everybody, Coach Brew here. Welcome to the X Factor podcast, episode number 00. John?
Two.
Part 2, if you will. Episode 000 was the announcement of the podcast by Sam Elliott. I'm just kidding. We're cheap. We didn't hire Sam Elliott. We hired a voiceover actor that sounds like Sam Elliott. Episode 1 was orienting the listener to the pod, what to expect. I actually fined my co-host, Jon Rennie, several $100s for his behavior on that episode. If you haven't listened to it yet, you can go back and listen to episode 001. And we just kind of talk about what the X Factor is, what it isn't, who would qualify for the X Factor, and who certainly won't. We also introduced you to the DFE. The DFE is our intern. Some people mistakenly call him Parker. I don't know that that's really his first name, and I don't think he has a last name. He's just the DFE, the director of freaking everything, or whatever F word you'd like to throw in there. He's a fine, young, God-fearing Christian, so we'll say he's the director of freaking everything. Say hello to everyone, Parker.
Hello, everyone.
There you go. He's a man of few words, too. He's like a strong, silent type. But his girlfriend really likes me. He shared that. He confessed that he was talking with her about us, and she was talking about how much she likes us. So,
Absolutely.
Yeah, you can go back and hear that too on episode 1. Episode 2 here today, Jon Rennie,
Yes,
who is the muscle behind the podcast. I'm the brains. He's the muscle. Is actually a guest on his own podcast today. So I am going to be interviewing him about the X Factor.
Coach Brew, how are you today?
Thanks for asking. I'm glad someone cares about my well-being.
Yeah,
because in my house, I'm not even a household name in my own household.
I have the same problem.
Teenage children who don't even know I'm there unless they need transportation or money. Then I exist.
Yeah, my wallet in my house is the ATM.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's I feel like I'm living my best life, just throwing my money away to other people. Yeah, it's great, isn't it?
It's wonderful. Absolutely.
Kids, they said it'll be rewarding. They said, this is how your parents talk about you when you're not around, Parker.
Oh, I'm sure they do, actually.
In case you're wondering. Children should be seen, not heard, so just sit there, okay? Do I need to mute you? Should I mute him, John?
No, don't mute Parker. Parker didn't. He's director of freaking everything.
Yeah, he can unmute himself and mute me if he wanted to, because
Probably.
He's the DFE. DFE's gonna DFE. We've learned that.
He's younger and smarter than the both of us, so he probably can mute us both. So that would be a short podcast if that happened.
So we are here to interview John. John is, well, I would just say I'm kind of like a God figure in his life. Jon Rennie wears Coach Brew underoos. Put it to you that way.
Who doesn't?
Good point. Superman wears Coach Brew underoos too. So Parker, you're not old enough to remember what underoos are. Ask your grandparents. Hashtag Gen Z problems. I gave movie quotes before I hit record. Before we started this, I was quoting movies. I quoted Top Gun. He was clueless. I quoted A Few Good Men. He was clueless. We were in a group text, and I sent a GIF from the movie Sandlot. You're killing me, Smalls. And he had no idea what that was either. So right now, the DFE I'm running the risk of like getting muted on my own podcast, but right now the DFE is getting an F- in life, folks.
Yeah. Yeah. So he's got to get some. He has to know his history lessons. He needs to know life from the 80s and 90s, right? Better.
Dude is really going to be thrown for a loop when I start quoting Fletch.
Right.
Yeah.
Your name. State your name. Fletch. Full name. F. Lech. Your occupation, Mr. Lech. I'm a shepherd. So ask your parents about that one too, Parker. Anyway, this episode is not about Parker. It's about John. He's a guest on his own podcast called The X Factor. So John, give us a little history. I'm going to pretend like I don't know anything about you. And I'm going to pretend to be every intellectually lazy podcast interviewer or media person ever. So John, tell us about how you first got your start. Take us back to your formative years.
I think it was Staff Sergeant Gagney. They told me my haircut was still too long. That's how I started my journey.
Well, you do have Hollywood hair. Like if you're not watching on our YouTube channel, you can switch over there and take a look at John's Hollywood hair.
I'm trying to put enough gel in it to really get the look. You know, when you get old,
you're gelling like a felon.
You got to gel it up. You got to look good. So I started my career as a naval officer, but I went to ROTC and I met Staff Sergeant Gagney. It was combined Marine Corps Navy ROTC unit and Staff Sergeant Gagney. And I had long hair. I had great locks in high school. And I had cut them all off thinking I would have short hair as I joined the Navy and I'd be fine. And Staff Sergeant Gagney screamed and yelled at me that my hair was too long. And he said to me, I want to see blood on the sides and skin on the top. That's what he wanted for a haircut. So I do not have that haircut today, but I did have that back in the day. So so former naval officer.
You went the ROTC route.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I went to engineering school, ROTC, and I shipped off into the Navy as a naval officer for 5 years on the USS Tennessee, a ballistic missile submarine. And back when Reagan was president and moving out to Reagan to Bush, I was an officer on a submarine in the Cold War when we still had an enemy that was a country, which was the Soviet Union back in the day. So and spent.
China isn't a country. I mean, that's our enemy today, I think.
China.
No,
No. I don't know. We're not. We don't have a Cold War going on yet with China, but I'm sure we're heading that direction. So.
I think we do. I think we've had a Cold War with them for the last 20 years, but this isn't a podcast about politics.
It's not about politics, but to have a war, you have to have an enemy, and we haven't recognized them as an enemy until recently, I think. So, but
you know who
I digress. So, former naval officer, did 7 patrols during the Cold War. And then
define patrol for us. What is a
patrol?
Patrol
is it's about 80 to 90 days that you go out to sea and we were a ballistic missile submarine with nuclear weapons pointed at the Soviet Union. So we went away and we hid in the Atlantic Ocean from both U.S. forces, Allied forces, and Soviet forces for 80 to 90 days, and we'd return to port. That's what a patrol was. And all total, I spent 2 years of my life underwater as I went through that.
I'm getting claustrophobic just thinking about that.
Yeah. It was pretty tight quarters, so that's for sure.
Yep.
But then I parlayed all that great experience into the corporate world, where I went on to work in the 3 different corporations, global corporations, for 22 years. And I ran 8 different manufacturing plants during that time. So basically running manufacturing businesses. And then 5 years ago, I just unplugged from the corporate matrix and I plugged into becoming an entrepreneur full time. And I I took the red pill.
Yep.
And I am now an entrepreneur, and I run a manufacturing company called Peak Demand, and I can shout out to Peak Demand because they are a sponsor to this podcast.
Correct.
And
This
which-
podcast today, episode number 002, is brought to you by Peak Demand,
Oh, that's
an
good.
industry leader in providing, what is it they provide, John?
Products for electrical utilities.
And where would people, our many, many listeners, especially our P1s who buy anything we sell, where would they learn more on the interwebs about Peak Demand?
Learn more at peakdemand.com.
And if you're going to call in, ask for Max Power.
Ask for
and
Max Power.
Tell him Coach Bruce sent you.
Yeah, Max Power will take care of you. So yeah, so I run a manufacturing business. I'm an entrepreneur, and so we, we've been going at it for 5 years, and we are growing in the midst of a chaotic year. So that's me. I also I wrote a book called I Have the Watch. It's a leadership book, and I have run a podcast called Deep Leadership Podcast, where I interview
No
leaders,
free shout
entrepreneurs.
outs.
Hey, no, it's not free.
Parker, DFE.
He's gray area.
I'm gonna put that one up to. We'll judge that one later. We'll
Okay.
judge it later.
Right.
So I host the Deep Leadership Podcast, where I interview leaders and entrepreneurs around the country. People are doing some cool things with respect to leadership, and that's me in a
He
nutshell.
records that podcast from a miniature submarine in his swimming pool in his backyard, folks. That's why it's called Deep Leadership.
Yes,
where
absolutely.
he really submerges himself into the subject matter.
Yes, yeah, we get deep.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So, John, talking about X Factor,
Yeah.
I'd like to know how you define the X Factor. I shared how I define the X Factor in the last episode. Probably should have saved that for the next episode where you interview me. But how would you define it? And it's a two-part question. If you can hold two simultaneous thoughts, if not, write the second one down. How would you define it? And what's the X Factor look like in the military environment, like in your previous world that you worked in?
Well, I mean, let me tell you first what the X Factor means to me. It's somebody, or it's either an organization or a person that has that special something to rise above the pack, rise above the crowd. So, we have tons and tons of people who want to start businesses. They want to be entrepreneurs. They want to start a pizza shop, but there's only a few that really rise up and become that place that everybody goes to. Everybody wants to find out more about. Everybody wants to follow them. You wrote a book, Coach Brew, called Stadium Status, and it's this idea of raising and elevating your game to the fact that you are actually filling stadiums with your fans, right? So who are those people? Who are those companies? Who are those industries that are really changing things, that have that X factor, that are actually taking things to a whole new level? That's what I consider that to be.
Yeah, you're either staying the same or changing the game. And if you have the X factor, you are a game changer.
Yeah. So with respect to military, it's kind of interesting. One of the things that they would do, you knew who had an X factor just by looking at their ribbons on their chest. And one thing was called a battle E. It's stood for battle efficiency. Well, it doesn't sound really cool, but it really is a cool thing. It's actually a competition every year for the ship or the boat or the command that
Submarine's a boat. We learned that last episode. Submarine is not a ship, folks.
But also ships in the Navy can get the Battle E as well. But it's the best of the best, and the best of the best every year wears that Battle E ribbon. Those are the guys that could fight the ship better than anybody else in the fleet. So those are the best of the best. Those are the guys with the X factor. And so USS Tennessee, the boat I was on, we were a Battle E boat. So we had that X factor in the military. But
you were on the Tennessee?
USS Tennessee.
You told me you were on the Minnow.
Oh, just for 3 hours. I made you laugh.
Get that. Hashtag Gen Z problems.
No. So that's
X
it.
Factor on a ship, like you got the hardware that you're wearing on your uniform. Describe like some of the character traits of like X Factor.
All right. So I'm going to actually tell you a story.
I'm all ears.
All right. So here's this. So imagine, if you will, you are the head of a small college summer league baseball team, right? And you're looking for a place to have your games. And you find that there's an old historic stadium over 100 years old located in Savannah, Georgia, that you could
That's
possibly,
bananas.
yes. So you could possibly rent that space and have your team play in the summer there.
Yep.
Imagine. So when you first start out, that you sell about a dozen season tickets for a stadium that can seat 4,000. So how can you change that? How can you elevate your game? How, first of all, people don't even watch baseball anymore. How do you make baseball more than just baseball? Well, there's a guy by the name of Jesse Cole who figured that out. And if you don't know who Jesse Cole is,
shout out to Jesse Cole. No free shout outs.
no free shout outs, but this book right here, Find Your Yellow Tux. It's the story of Jesse Cole. And he went into old Grayson Stadium, and he took an approach to baseball that it is entertainment. It's about, it's not about a game. It's about entertainment and entertaining families. And so he took ideas from P.T. Barnum and Disney, and he launched this baseball team, and he went out to the community. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, two other people of the X Factor, P.T. Barnum and Walt Disney.
Bingo. You're exactly. Absolutely.
Yes.
So he went to the community and he said, help us name this team, this Savannah team in this old historic stadium. And all these names came in, and one name really stood out: the Bananas, the Savannah Bananas. And they said, that's different. That's unique. We want to go with Savannah Bananas, and everything we're going to go with is yellow uniforms.
A little alliteration there.
Yes. And the city leaders in Savannah were just shocked and horrified. You can't take this historic stadium and call something the Bananas. I mean, you're disrespecting the history here. And he had a lot of people that went against him in the early stages, right? And that's one thing you'll see with the X Factor. When people try to do things different, you're going to get a lot of resistance early on. They're going to be saying, wait, you're crazy. You can't do that, right?
Yep.
If you hear people say you can't do that, then you're likely you have the X Factor and you're about to change the rules of the game.
Yeah, you're on to something. If people tell you it's a stupid idea, you're on to something.
Right. So he starts this stadium, and you know what? He realizes that, families take their families out to the baseball game and they get nickeled and dimed to death. They pay for the ticket, then they got to get the food, and then they get the beer, and they get all this thing. So he said, we'll do this. One price. You get in, and you can all you can eat inside the stadium. $15 gets you in, all you can eat. They ended up selling out season tickets for 2 years straight once they rolled this thing out. And when you go to the game, it's completely different. There's the players are out front greeting the fans as you come in. They dance in between innings. They have these they have older women who dress up, and they're the Savannah Nanas, and they dance in between innings. If you have a newborn baby, they invite you to come down, and they do the, what do they call it? What was that movie?
The Lion King.
The Lion King. They hold them up, and they do the Lion King theme with the players hold up the baby, and they do the Lion King thing. But just this whole the idea is that they changed the rules of baseball, and they made it fun again, and they ended up selling the place out. And Jesse Cole runs around in a yellow tuxedo, and that's all he wears all the time is a yellow tuxedo. And he talks about, and he's basically a ringleader for that business. And one of the things he said, and I love this, and this is very Coach Brew like, because I know you talk about it a lot as well.
Jesse's actually been on my podcast. He's a great dude.
Wonderful guy.
He gets it. Yeah.
He says, if it's normal, do the exact opposite. That's his message. And so for me, that's X Factor. That's the kind of people we're looking to talk to, looking to highlight, and people that are making a difference in their industry.
And I think one thing you spoke to with regard to Jesse, that I think all leaders and brands that have the X Factor do or possess or are, however you want to say it, 3 words: force of nature. Like, he could have just said, we had a name the team contest and one reader wrote in bananas. And then the community just said, that's horrible. That'll never work. He could have just said, okay, well, we'll let it be done by committee. And if other people don't like it, we'll go with what sort of the popular theme is. No, we're going to make this work.
Yeah.
Because we have a vision. I have a vision, and we're going to prove you wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Walt Disney, same thing. P.T. Barnum, same thing. Force of nature. Everyone knows the X Factor is a force of nature. My favorite one is probably Tom Brady, but we'll talk about that in the next episode when you interview me.
All right. That sounds good.
Yeah, if you have the X Factor, you are a force of nature.
Speaking about naming things, I thought it was kind of interesting. You remember there was a British icebreaker that they went to the public and they said, help us name our icebreaker. Do you remember that?
No.
So they went out to the general public and
Publix, the grocery store?
No, not the Publix, the grocery store. Publix, like the UK public. And they asked them to name the boat. And apparently someone had got a lot of people involved, and the name that was pushed, the name that was the most voted on was Bodie McBoatface was the name of the boat.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. And, they had a chance, the UK government had a chance to name that boat Bodie McBoatface, but they didn't. And I really am sad about that because I think it would have been the greatest boat ever.
What is it
Actually,
named?
a ship. What
is it named?
I don't know.
Yeah, nobody knows. Nobody remembers, but they remember Bodie McBoatface. And I remember that story. Most people still just call it Bodie McBoatface, even though that's not the real name.
Yeah. Should have named it that. Good opportunity.
X Factor.
Yeah, let me give you another example. It was a guy, I saw a photo online. It was a guy who was did roofing on housing. And he,
is that where you do roofing?
What's that?
Is that where you do roofing on housing?
Yeah, on housing. Well,
but you don't do housing on roofing.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
Roofing company.
Okay.
And it was called Fiedler's Roofing Company. And he missed Fiedler on the Roof. How could you not get Fiedler on the Roof out of that? It's just, how do you miss these?
Parker, DFE. Write this down, put it on the list. Hall of Shame.
How could you not do Fiedler on the Roof?
Done.
Mm-hmm. So anyway, that's X Factor is the people that choose names like that.
Yeah. And most people don't, because that takes a pair.
Right.
It takes cojones. Or our, would it be Latin American or just Spanish listeners?
Latinx.
Cojones.
Cojones.
So yeah, Fiedler on the Roof. How do you miss that?
Yeah.
What an opportunity. So yeah, it's doing it different, and the different is the difference. And if you have the X Factor, if you get what I'm saying, the different is the difference. And it's getting comfortable with being different. It's getting comfortable with everyone in your industry is going one direction and you go the exact opposite direction, and having the courage and your convictions to do exactly that. Not an easy thing to do. So we have our first kind of charter member to the Hall of Shame, Fiedler Roofing. No free shout outs, Hall of Shame. And I think the founding fathers of the Hall of Shame are probably Gary V and Simon Sinek. If you go back and listen to episode 001, you'll know why. But we are building our Hall of Shame. We are also building our Hall of Fame here on the X Factor. You'll notice that I didn't ask Jon Rennie a follow-up question, because he just randomly got up and left the room.
Sorry.
And he doesn't need to apologize, because he knows I am such a seasoned broadcasting professional. I would simply recognize that, put this podcast on my back because I have broad shoulders, and I would carry it in his absence. So now everyone wants to know, where the hell did you go? What were you doing? It could possibly be more important than talking to them.
My podcast studio has people outside there. So, yeah.
People?
Yeah, my son.
I
My podcast studio, I don't have a light on that says recording. I need to do that. So,
thought you lived in a van down by the river.
I
You have
did.
people living with you?
Yeah. My, well, for a short amount of time, my son is heading out in the Navy in, less than 30 days. So soon he'll be off into the world of naval warfare.
Submariner?
No, surface ship, target.
What was your advice to him when you found out that was the career path that he was going to carve out for himself?
So
I don't
told
mean
him,
surface. I just mean Navy.
So I told him the same advice my grandfather told me, who was a sailor on the USS Frost in World War II. He amazing battles that he was in. Kind of that ship has got a pretty interesting history. Anyways, he told me the one thing about the Navy, the one thing about the military is you don't want to stand out. Just the opposite of the X Factor. He said, when you're going through basic training and all that, don't be too good and don't be too bad. You don't want to stand out, because if you stand out, they end up giving you a lot more work and they put more burdens on you and what have you. So he said, don't stand out. Just the opposite of the X Factor.
So did you follow that advice?
Yeah, pretty much through training I did. I just sort of stayed out of the spotlight, and that was probably the best way to be.
So let me ask you this. When you left the military and, that advice kind of got hardwired into you, from day one, how do you remove that programming from your software in your brain? Because not standing out and just kind of fitting in, following the norms does not serve you well in business.
No, it doesn't. That's a really good point, because in fact, in corporate America, working for large corporations, it actually does. So you actually should, if you're too good or too bad, you tend to stand out. And that, so a lot of people in corporate America do follow I'm just going to do my job, stay, I'm not going to keep my head down. I'm not going to rock the boat. I'm just going to do my thing. And so they have, they'll work a 40-year career and never stand out. And but when you get to be an entrepreneur, when you start your own business, you've got to throw that stuff away. You have to stand out, right? You can't look like the rest of everyone. Like Jesse said, right? Yep. It's not, if it's normal, do the exact opposite. You need to do the opposite of what the mainstream is doing if you want to stand out.
Yeah. We'll talk more about that in the next episode. But one thing I will say for the DFE, part of the beauty of him producing this podcast and actually riding in his car seat in the back seat of this vehicle.
Don't make me come back there. Don't make me stop this car.
It's forward facing. He's old enough that it's forward facing.
Oh,
He's
that's
not facing backwards. We don't have to look through two mirrors in front of the minivan to see his face to make sure he's still breathing. But one of the good things about him riding in the car seat in the back seat here is the young man is getting an education that other people are not getting his age. And so I'd like to think of this as a fabulous job perk for the DFE. He just doesn't know it yet, and he's figuring it out. Like, why am I on here? Why am I listening to this? Besides,
so the one thing about this podcast is that our perks are actually better than our salary with respect to what we pay.
Yeah, so. I mean, like, we might throw him a pizza or some coffee or whatever. But yeah, like there's a lot of qualitative benefits and intangibles that, frankly, are priceless.
See,
the opportunity to work with Jon Rennie, priceless.
Yeah, I mean,
absolutely.
Putting up with Coach Brew, priceless. And when I say priceless, I mean incredibly expensive,
Yeah.
painfully expensive. So, John, X factor to you in the military. We talked about that. We talked about kind of unwiring that subconscious programming gets beat into you. Don't stand out, fit in. Um, with regard to the X factor, like if you were to say, like, here's the number one thing that contributes to someone being like having X factor potential, what would that one thing be?
I think you got to be smart enough to see what everybody's doing and trying to figure out how to do the opposite, how to do something that's different. I'll give you an example. Um, and this is an example from that you've pointed out in the past. So everybody's mailing out letters, right? White envelopes, for example, and you want your mail to stand out. Well, what do? Well, you put yours in a yellow envelope, right? It gets out to your customers, and the first piece of mail they're going to open up is going to be that yellow envelope. People that see things recognize those things and do just the opposite. Let me give you an example of this. The Sears Roebuck catalog, right? When they first came out with it, they realized that
the DFE is not going to know what that is.
Yeah, I know. So look that one up for people that are a little older. But so yeah, there's again, is that a Coach Brew? Yeah. So his envelopes are a different color, right? So they stand out from every other envelope that you might get in your mailbox, right?
And what's on the back? What do most people put on the back of a business card or an envelope? Nothing.
Yeah, and it's free space.
Valuable real estate.
Yeah. So the story about the Sears Roebuck catalog is they made it smaller because they realized that housewives would, when they were cleaning up and tidying up their kitchens, they would stack the catalogs over on one area, and they'd always stack it in a pyramid. So that made sure that the Sears Roebuck catalog always ended up on the top of the pile. So it's just seeing patterns in the way things are done and doing something different to stand out. That's what it's all about.
That other people don't see.
Yeah. That's what that. So I'm really attracted to the people that find those things and have the ability to discover those little things that let them stand out. So that's what it's all about. And those are the kind of people we want to look to talk to and highlight here.
Little things win big games. Little things make a big difference. I've always said that. Absolutely. So put your coaching hat on, John. Leadership expert, Coach Jon Rennie. You need a hat. You don't have a coaching hat, but I got you covered. We sell hats. My online store.
What is that, by the way? What's that website of an online store?
It's my apparel brand, which is chinupchestout.com. It is a motivational apparel brand, and you can learn more at chinupchestout.com. We're about to launch our winter collection. We do collections. We did our original collection, summer and fall. And now we sold out of the fall collection. We're about to launch the winter collection, which will have beanie hats with winter coming, and baseball hats too, like ball caps, trucker hats, like this beautiful hat I'm wearing now. And what was that domain name again, Parker?
For the X Factor?
No. Oh boy. He just blew that opportunity for shameless plug for me.
Wow, I
should fine him.
He's getting fined for not paying attention.
Chinupchestout.com, folks.
Baby.
So, John, put your coaching hat on. Now that we just gave myself a free shout out, and figuratively speaking, I wouldn't want you to ruin your beautiful Hollywood hair.
Isn't that you told John, Mr. Rennie, that was a fine?
Yeah.
So isn't that a fine on your ends as well?
So debits and credits, DFE. Debits and credits.
So I think these are offsetting penalties.
Shout outs he's given.
These are offsetting penalties.
Yeah. So it's offsetting penalties.
Oh, okay. So we're back to zero.
Down.
We're back to zero.
First down.
Yeah, exactly. So now I can't even remember my question. You're putting your coaching hat
But my
on.
coaching, my
What's the
leadership.
what's the one thing someone should do to kind of cultivate the X factor? Was that my question?
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
That was.
All right.
So what can they do to cultivate the X
Yeah,
factor?
start cultivating it.
Number one is learn lessons from outside your industry.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, when you're in an industry like myself, I'm in the products industry for electric utility products industry. So everybody's doing everything the same exact way. And they have been for years and years. Like, for
They
example,
all sell to the same audience, right?
yeah.
Municipalities typically.
So same suppliers doing the same things. Like, for example, like the current lead times for most products that I make and other people make are 6 to 8 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sitting in a world where I'm watching Amazon. Sorry, Amazon. Sorry.
No shout outs.
Oh,
Sorry, I brought up Amazon. There
That
are
should be double.
online retail companies that can deliver in 24 hours. And in my industry, it's 6 to 8 weeks. So we said, what if we could take a model from an online retailer and put it in a traditional older business like this, and we ship our products in 24 hours, and people are blown away by it. They're like, wow.
Peak prime.
Yeah. So they didn't think anyone could ever do that. And we figured out a way to do it by designing our products to be modular, that we can build them quick and ship them out the next day. No one else is doing that. So again,
in an era where everyone wants it yesterday, and the audience, people have been trained to expect to be able to get things instantly and on demand. That's a competitive advantage. That's how you cultivate the X factor. Think different.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Awesome. John, this is an opportunity now for you to promote the podcast to our audience. What do you want them to do? How should they follow us? How can they connect with us socially?
I don't even know.
And you can lean on the DFE.
Can I delegate that responsibility? So if you are interested in learning more about the X Factor podcast, follow us at.
So on Instagram, it will be podcast X Factor. On YouTube, it will be the X Factor Podcast. On Facebook, it will be the X Factor Podcast. And on Twitter, it will be Podcast X Factor.
Right.
And then each individual business, I will link in the description down below. Chinupchestout.com, and both authors' books will be linked as well.
And Peak Demand.
Peakdemand.com. Yeah.
Peakdemand.com.
Yep.
Again, remember, when you go to Peak Demand, ask for Max Power when you call and tell him Coach Brew sent you.
Max Power. He is our
Sweet.
guy.
So John, we're winding this thing down.
Yeah.
People are going to follow us. Our P1s are already P1ing. They're following us. They are evangelists or super fans. They're sharing this up. I'm confident they are, because we set the bar high for them. High performers like associating with other high performers. They do not like low performers. So if you're not a P1, you're actually dragging down our biggest fans and our best listeners. You need to elevate. Okay. Final words of wisdom from you, and maybe let people know what they can expect in the next episode. I've been carrying this episode on my back with my broad shoulders while you just get up and leave the room in the mid question. I've told everyone what episode 0 and episode 1 contained. If they've stuck with us and they're still listening at this point in episode 2, they know what episode 2 is. What can they expect from the next episode? Do the tables turn? I wonder, do they? They might. The tables, they might be turning. They might be spinning.
We are Jesus in the temple. We are flipping tables over, and I will be interviewing Coach Brew in the next episode of the X Factor podcast.
It's probably going to feel like I'm being waterboarded.
That's a good idea.
Sweet. Catch you in the next episode. Follow, subscribe, share, rate, review. 5 stars, 1 stars, doesn't matter. We have thick skin. You're not going to offend us. See you in the next episode.
Bye.